Jim, can I start off by asking you why you think the equity markets are not responding to the stabilization plans that are being introduced around the world at the moment?
Because they're absurd.
They're preempting the collapse of the dollar. If gold goes to 1,500, that's not because dentists are suddenly busy, filling people's teeth. It has to do with the fact that the dollar is imploding.
You've got the increasing budget deficits in the U.S., but one thing about treasuries is that the Fed has the ability to buy treasuries and literally print dollars. So you're kind of dealing with a fiat currency, and that means that rather than treasuries collapsing, you might have the dollar collapse.
China is buying lots of this stuff, gold bullion. They can't get enough of gold bullion. India's buying gold bullion. China's buying gold bullion as a way to hedge themselves against these things. This is Warren Buffett toilet paper. Warren Buffett toilet paper here, the U.S. dollar. It's going to zero.
The United States will face debt burdens in the future that would make the U.S. look like a third world nation from a public finance perspective.
And we are in the process of setting up an economic crisis much worse than the one we think we solved. The currency crisis is coming, Larry. I know you think King Dollar is potentially coming back, but it's not.
But one thing I want to stress, this crisis, nothing has been solved. That should be clear.
We have unemployment at 26-year highs. We have teenage unemployment at all-time records since they've been taking records.
We now have a financial system that's completely based on moral hazard, too big to fail. All the big banks left standing believe that they are immune from any future failure because that's what happened in the last year. That's what Tim Guyton has told them. That's what Larry Summers has told them. And crazy things happen when you have a financial system like that. Now, the conventional wisdom is you can't have back-to-back major financial crises. I think we're going to push that. We're going to have a look and see whether that's true. The next 12 months could really be exciting. People could be very positive, but we are setting ourselves up for an enormous catastrophe.
We are still concerned about more credit losses to come over the following months. The second leg of the option arm resets and all-day loans has now commenced. And money is just pouring into all sorts of assets because people are getting very, very worried about inflation and the loss of purchasing power of paper money because central banks are just destroying the value of paper money. They're debasing the currencies, and that's why stocks, commodities, precious metals, everything is going up and the value of paper money is going down.
I mean, I tell you, when you look at the United States, you cannot imagine that they can solve their problems.
It's not a recovery. It's a cover-up.
The next country that is very vulnerable would be, say, Japan or the United States, and also in Europe, within the EU, we have the so-called PIGS, in other words, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And these are countries that are quite vulnerable.
We see lots of ripple effects going on as the global markets try to rebound from this deep recession that they've been in the last couple of years. What are your metrics telling you? What are you seeing?
Well, what you've seen is China started tightening policy earlier this month or early in January, and that's taken its toll. It's taken its toll most quickly, obviously, on Greece, which is the focus of the news these days. It's the 33rd largest economy in the world, but that means that it's manageable. The problem is that when you start to add on Spain, which is a very large economy in Europe, or even Italy, then you start to get into an equation where you really have to look at this from a big picture perspective.
The new opposition frontbencher Barnaby Joyce has raised the spectre of a global economic armageddon. The coalition spokesman for finance has questioned the world's priorities in holding climate talks in Copenhagen at a time when he says governments are still confronted by huge financial risks. He says those risks include potential loan defaults by governments here, and that's earned him a rebuke from the Prime Minister, who's accused Senator Joyce of gross economic irresponsibility.
Senator Joyce has claimed the United States might not be able to repay its foreign debt and could spark an economic Armageddon. He's also claimed that some Australian states could default on their loans.
Well, I mean, sovereign debt defaults throughout history has been very common. For centuries, sovereign states have defaulted on their obligations. Usually it happens because they borrow too much and just can't pay.
Now here we are 1 year later in September of 2009, and they're talking about the possibilities of a recovery.
The employment situation hasn't improved much. I don't think that employment will improve very much. It may stabilize but not improve much.
They're saying that the stimulus program is now working. Well, what's going to happen when the stimulus runs out? When you can't use this paper money to create any more jobs? This is the likes of which no one has ever seen before. There will not be a recovery. We're going into the greatest depression. People better grow up about it. The jobs that have been lost forever.
We committed $11 trillion to the financial system. So no wonder that with such a massive policy stimulus, the markets and the economy have recovered. The question is how we're going to pay for it over time. At which point the fiscal deficit is going to become unsustainable, at which point this monetization of fiscal deficit is going to be also dangerous, and therefore, in my view, we're partly stealing demand from the future and will pay for the consequences of excessive policy stimulus down the line.
Well, we would all have a depression, or as simple as that. The policymakers all over the world thought that it was best to prolong or basically postpone the problem by injecting this huge amount of stimulus, by printing money and creating inflation. And although the Chinese are using their own money, I think the situation in the West is even worse because the governments don't even have the money. They're borrowing money, they're printing money.
And again, we must answer history's call. 1 year ago, I took office amid 2 wars, an economy rocked by a severe recession, a financial system on the verge of collapse, and a government deeply in debt. And 1 year later, the worst of the storm has passed.
We have people in power that if our forecasts were as wrong as theirs, we would have been laughed out of business 30 years ago when we began. Why would people believe Ben Bernanke? Why would they believe President Obama? Why would they believe Larry Summers or Timothy Geithner? One after another, their forecasts have been wrong, and they're wrong about the recovery.
If I had come on your show every week for 100 weeks in a row and everything I said to you was wrong, would you keep me on your show? Would you have any confidence in me? Would you listen to me? Mr. Paulson, Mr. Bernanke, and the guy at the New York Fed, Tim somebody, every week they have been dead wrong. Why would you listen to them? I wouldn't listen to them.